Okay, guys, so we started chapter 3 on federalism, or the federal system. It's the same thing, about how power is divided between state and local governments. And last week we just kind of identified some of the other ways in which power is divided in throughout history, and including American history. And we started with what we got today, power to the people, federal system. Even though the word federal or federalism, it doesn't appear one time in the Constitution. It is, by all means, created by the Constitution. Federalism is a principle of the Constitution. All right, so Confederation, that's what we had as our first attempt at government, which is like, type of government which the national government gets its power from the states, okay? So it's kind of like a league of independent states. And then before that, we had the unitary system, which is authority from a single authority, super strong national government, all right, with very little local or regional power. All power comes from that federal or upper level, okay, a central authority. All right, and that's just kind of how we identified it. All right, now, we, being good Americans, after having lived with the United States Constitution since 1789, we're really big fans of the Constitution. Everybody loves the Constitution. You ever heard anybody say anything bad about the Constitution? Everybody loves it because you can use it however you want. Okay, so let's talk about how the Constitution works and the parts of it, and we're going to apply it to the different levels. Okay, because that's what federalism is all about: the division of power between the state government and the federal government. Okay, so we'll start with national powers. National powers, federal powers, central, they're all the same, okay? All right, all of the powers that are specifically listed in the Constitution, what are those powers that are numbered specifically? This is the powers. Those are called the enumerated powers. And you can straight up find them. They're literally like written in there. Article 1, Section 8. There's 17 of them. Boom, boom, boom. One right after another. And it's things like coin money, conduct foreign affairs, have an army, navy, declare war, post office, stuff like that. Okay? Are those the only powers the federal government has? No, they got those powers that allow it to stretch, and those are called the implied powers. And there's a clause within the Constitution that says that Congress has the authority to enact laws necessary and proper. That is the elastic clause. It allows the Congress to stretch. Okay? So those are really the two types of federal powers: enumerated and implied. Those are things that the government can do. Some of them are just straight written in there. Some of them, as long as it's deemed to be necessary and proper, Congress can do that. So are the powers of the federal government broad or are they narrow? Broad, because of the elastic clause. It allows it to stretch. It can get larger. Is our government larger today than it was 100 years ago? Yeah. What about 200 years ago? Yeah. Much larger, because power of government can stretch. Does this make sense? Now, are federal powers the only powers contained within the Constitution? Does anybody else have any power? Do the states have any power? What are the states' powers called? Good guess. Everybody knows what the state's powers are called? They are called the reserved powers. And the reserved powers are in the 10th Amendment. It's called the Reserved Powers Amendment. It's part of the Bill of Rights. Before the Bill of Rights were added, the states, not really any power for them. Okay, so the Constitution is establishing power between the federal government and the state government. Where's the federal government's power? Where can you find it at? Where? Article 1, Section 8. The state's powers are found where? The 10th Amendment. You have to know these things. You will be tested on this on your AP test, okay? It's not hard. You just need to know it. So they're both in the Constitution. One was added at the beginning. One was added afterwards. Okay. So it is not until the 10th Amendment, the final part of the Bill of Rights, where the state's powers described in great detail. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. That's what the 10th Amendment says. So if the federal government doesn't take care of it, the states can. That's basically what it does. So these powers, which are called the reserved powers, or powers reserved for the states, they include all kinds of stuff. Like the states have the ability to legislate for public health. That's why, I'm sure you've noticed in recent years, like mask mandates, they don't come from the federal government. They come from the states. It's up to each individual state to vaccinate and encourage people to do that. Like baby dog. You know baby dog? You ever heard of this dumb stuff? Baby dog? The governor's dog. It's the governor of West Virginia, not the governor of Virginia telling us that. It's not President Biden's dog we're doing it for. We're getting vaccinated for the governor's dog.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay, so because it is up to the state. The state is responsible for public health, okay? The state is also responsible for your safety, public safety. Not a lot of United States police officers running around. I mean, we got the FBI and we got U.S. Marshals, but they're not like running radar and stuff, making sure that you're being safe. The state of West Virginia does that, okay, with state troopers, and then our state has counties, and so we have county deputies, and some places have local law enforcement, and those would be municipalities like Beckley, Sophia, Leicester, Mabscott. Used to be Rodale, but not anymore. Okay, so that's the jobs on the of the state. And each state can do things differently. Like, if I murder 1,800 people in the state of West Virginia, what's the worst that can happen to me? Go to prison for the rest of my life. Never see the sun again. If I murder 1,800 people in Texas, what's going to happen to me? I'm going to be murdered back. Because some states have the death penalty. It's totally up to the state. It's totally up to the state. Some states, you can go smoke as much marijuana as you want. Other states, you're not even allowed to carry it. Okay? That's up to the states. Okay? So the states also define different levels of morality. Different levels of morality. Okay? And that is up to that state. And some states even allow localities to determine morality. So, if a person's walking naked down the streets of Beckley, they're probably going to not get too far. Somebody's going to call the police, and somebody's going to come pick them up. Somebody's walking naked down the streets of Las Vegas, they will probably make it to their destination. Because it's just a different level of morality. Okay? So, states are also responsible for that. Does that make sense? States also get to determine the method of death penalty. Most states use the lethal injection. Some states allow the criminal to decide. There was a guy in Oregon, he said, I want the electric chair about 3 years ago. And he got electrocuted to death like 3 years ago. They let him choose. So most of the time it is lethal injection. But there have been other forms of capital punishment that states have used as their formal form of death penalty, such as lethal injection, gas chamber, electric chair, hanging, or firing squad. Those are those are the most commonly used ways that states do that. Some of them are from the past, but some of them can still be used. And some of them let you choose from those 5. Okay? All right? So, states have a good amount of power? Yeah, just in certain areas. Okay, just in certain areas. As much as the state of West Virginia would love to declare war on another country, we're not allowed to do that. Okay? We can't do it. No state can. No state can. Only the federal government can do that. Because power is divided. Power is divided. Is all power divided? Are there some powers that both the federal government and state governments have? What are those called? Shared powers or concurrent powers. You guys got jobs? Pay taxes? You pay taxes to the United States of America? You pay taxes to the state of West Virginia? Both have the power to tax, and they use it. Both have the ability to establish courts. There are state laws and there are federal laws. Are you guys aware of this? If you break a state law, you go to state court. And if you're found guilty, you go to state prison. If you break a federal law, you go to federal court. And if you're found guilty, you go to federal prison. That is the difference. Both have the ability to do this. It all depends on what your crime is, too, as to how it is prosecuted against you. Okay? States and the federal government have the ability to regulate commerce, regulate banks, like we have state banks. Whitesville State Bank. You ever heard of it? Down here in Leicester Square? It's a state bank, and it is regulated by the state. But there are also banks that are regulated by the federal government, like the Federal Reserve. Hello. Yes, ma'am. Devin, Miss Atkins needs to see you in the office. Okay. Both the federal government and the states can borrow money. Who does the government borrow money from? Yeah, it can borrow money from the people. Who do they usually borrow money from? Other countries. We owe China a lot. Like, a lot. Like, your all's grandchildren probably won't even touch paying that bill. A lot. Okay? Both are responsible for providing for the general welfare, doing what is best for our... Did you guys hear that?
Yeah.
I don't know. And both have the ability to punish criminals. We have a federal judicial system and a state justice system. As I mentioned to you, with federal prisons versus state prisons. You don't want to go to either one, just so you know. Okay? But yeah, there are powers that are shared. Now, if you look at this Venn diagram, this is kind of like a good wrap-up for all the slides that we've done so far, because there are powers that only the federal government has, there's powers only the states' governments have, and there are powers that are shared. Okay? So, as much as the President of the United States wants to, the President of the United States cannot create a school. The President of the United States cannot establish a city or a town. Only states can do those things, okay? Not even Congress. Congress cannot make laws to regulate your marriage license. Only the states can do those things, all right? And just like here, only the federal government can do these things. So power is divided. It's separated.
If I die, don't tell me.
If I die, I'm getting paid, y'all. I'm feeling it's like, oh my God, my mom's shaking.
You should have seen the projector.
Yeah. Hopefully they're fixing like something.
The projector falls on me. If it falls on anybody, it's falling on me.
Well, there's like another ceiling up there. It's
Yeah.
not. They're not like walking on these tiles. So.
Okay.
I'll just be fine.
Okay.
No, this was like a...
It's independent.
Yeah.
I'm well aware of where I am.
It's cool.
Okay. Let's talk about power some more.
Yeah.
Federal, state, shared. Any other kind of powers? Are there certain things the government just can't do? Like what? Can the government do anything and everything? So the government's limited. Why?
Because they can't have too much power over the people.
Yeah. They can only do the things that we allow them to do. Because the Constitution has safeguards built into it that are called denied powers. These are just straight up things the government can't do. They're not allowed. They cannot do them. These are called denied powers. Denied. And these are expressly and explicitly written into the Constitution. The federal government can't favor one state over another when it comes to like interstate commerce. They can't do that. They can't play favorite states. It can't tax items exported from one state to another, or any state, or any country. We do not tax our exports. So if you are an American merchant, shipper, business person, and you create goods and you sell them, you never have to pay taxes on your exports. Now, the country that you're shipping to might tax you, and that's called a tariff. We have tariffs. We tax imports. We do not tax exports. Government's not allowed to do that. It's denied. Government employees may not accept salaries or gifts from other heads of state. Happens all the time. Usually when they do, it's in public. Like, hey, we go visit somebody, bring a box of cigars, and they shake hands and hug, and here's your cigars. That's different than like, hey, behind these closed doors, I'm going to give you $3 million if you do such and such for me. That's against the law. You're not allowed to do that. It's actually treason. Can't do that. Okay? No bills of attainder. You guys know what that even means? No? A bill of attainder is a law, whether it be passed by the federal government or state government, that would declare an act illegal without a judicial trial. So let's say Nikki does something that I don't like, and I'm a senator, and so I go into the United States Senate and I politic around. And I'm able to get a law passed that says whatever she did is now illegal, and then we lock her up. Basically, just because we passed a law that says it's illegal, and then we lock her up. That is a bill of attainder. That's not allowed. That's why you don't know what it is, because it doesn't happen. We don't do that. We're not allowed. It's denied. Okay? Has it happened in human history? Yeah, King, Parliament, they did that stuff all the time. But we're not allowed to do that because it's denied. All right? There's also no ex post facto laws. You guys know what that is? Ex post facto? Ex post facto is Latin. It means after the fact. So let's say that I go home today and I have a glass of bourbon. All right? And then tomorrow, the government passes the 28th Amendment, which brings prohibition back. And it's illegal to have alcohol. And then the day after that, Officer Pack comes and arrests me because I had a drink the day before the law was made. Technically, I would have been in violation of that law, but it wasn't against the law at the time. So that's an ex post facto law, all right? Or like, hey, let's just say, hey, tomorrow you have to wear a pink shirt, okay? So new law starts tomorrow, pink shirt. Well, I'm not wearing a pink shirt today, and so tomorrow they come and arrest me because I didn't wear a pink shirt today, even though the law wasn't created yet. Kind of convoluted, but that's just how it is, all right? Because the British government used to do that stuff all the time, lock people up for crime, like hey, we're gonna make it. It's now a crime for you to ship stuff to France, whatever, and you used to ship stuff to France, you're arrested. Okay, so whatever, just an example. Okay, so there are laws, certain things that government just can't do, and they're called denied powers, and they're written directly in there. Okay? Now the Constitution, and my face is super itchy today. Sorry. Do I have something on my face?
The way you
I'm sorry. Okay. The Constitution also talks to us and lets us know about how the states are allowed to relate to one another. Because the states are not always going to get along, and it's up to the national government to resolve disputes between states. And then, once a dispute is seen and noticed, they kind of facilitate establishing good relations between those states again. But they also can't, show favoritism. Usually it's the Supreme Court that determines this. The Supreme Court's job to settle disputes between states. They are the ones that are responsible for resolving interstate disputes. All right. Moreover, the Constitution, in Article 4, contains the full faith and credit clause. Article 4. The full faith and credit clause. Basically, anything that a judge, any kind of judicial decree that happens in one state is binding and enforceable in another state. So I mentioned this when we talked about vocabulary words. If I go to Las Vegas and get married and then come back here, am I married in West Virginia? Yeah, even though my marriage license says the state of Nevada, I'm married in West Virginia because of the full faith and credit clause. There is a judicial decree that occurred in a different place, and it has the full, and so the state of West Virginia will honor that with full faith and credit, and vice versa. Does that make sense? Okay, good. All right. Article 4 also contains the Privileges and Immunities Clause. Privileges and Immunities Clause. Basically, it guarantees that the citizens of each state are afforded the same rights of citizens of all the states. One state, it just says all the states are the same. Yeah, you're from Rhode Island. It's teeny tiny. Guess what? You still have all the rights. All right. It also contains the extradition clause. Extradition clause in Article 4. You guys know what that word extradition means? Nobody knows the word? You never watched like Law and Order or anything? Extradition or extradite? That's exactly right. Extradition, the extradition clause requires states to extradite or return criminals to states where they have been convicted to stand trial. So I'm from West Virginia, and let's say that I've kidnapped a bunch of people and done bad stuff in the state of West Virginia. And I've broken all kind of state laws in the state of West Virginia. And the state police are looking for me, local authorities are looking for me. So I moved to Florida. And the state of West Virginia just happens to be able to track me down in the state of Florida. Florida knows nothing of my crimes. But I get pulled over in Florida, and they run my records, and they see that there's several warrants out for my arrests. And come in. Hey.
What's up?
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Are you still having trouble printing?
I am. Yeah.
What's it doing?
All right. Let me show you.
Sorry to ask.